New criminal charges against Clinton friend Webb Hubbell, but the president wants to talk about America's booming economy, not problems. A father, his stunning confession, the stranger who turned him in. In depth, road rage, running red lights, deadly and dangerous. Tonight, a new crackdown. And the Fleecing of America, whatever happened to this TV show, and a boat ramp to nowhere.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw.
Good evening. One of the president's oldest political friends was defiant and emotional tonight. Webster Hubbell, indicted by Ken Starr today on tax evasion charges, said he will not cooperate with Starr against the president. Hubbell, whose wife also was indicted, said, "They can indict my dog, and I won't lie about the president." Here's NBC's Lisa Myers.
Showing just how far he's willing to go to get evidence against the Clintons, the independent counsel indicted not only Hubbell, but also his wife, Susie, for tax evasion and fraud.
The Hubbells owed taxes, interest, and penalties to the IRS, the state of Arkansas, and the District of Columbia in excess of $894,000.
Some of the charges involved the $700,000 in so-called consulting fees Hubbell received in 1994 from friends of the White House, at the very time Starr was pressuring Hubbell to cooperate with his investigation. Today, Starr charged that Hubbell did little or no work for that money, and that his accountant and lawyer, also both charged today, helped Hubbell hide some of the money, which should have gone to pay taxes owed as a result of Hubbell's previous conviction. The indictment also accuses Hubbell of failing to report certain income. Hubbell's lawyer accuses Starr of overreaching and trying to crush his client.
It is a tax charge that we are convinced would not be brought against an ordinary taxpayer.
I want you to know that the Office of Independent Counsel can indict my dog. They can indict my cat. But I'm not going to lie about the president. I'm not going to lie about the First Lady or anyone else.
Hubbell insists he has no damaging information to give Starr. Tonight, a statement from the White House saying the president and Mrs. Clinton are very saddened and feel bad for the Hubbells. Lisa Myers, NBC News, Washington.
For his part, President Clinton today held a nationally televised news conference before the Hubbell indictment was announced. He opened with today's news on the continuing growth of the American economy. And today there were more signs of tremendous growth, no signs of inflation. The gross domestic product, the broadest measure of the economy's strength, up an impressive 4.2% for the first quarter. At the same time, inflation is holding at its lowest level in 35 years. As a result, the Dow was up almost 112 points in very heavy trading. The NASDAQ gained almost 17 points. However, as NBC's Claire Shipman reports tonight, the news conference was not all economy all the time.
Tom, it was the president's first formal news conference in almost 5 months, and as you can imagine, it elicited questions on everything from the markets to Monica Lewinsky. On the latter subject, though, not many answers.
The president's agenda in his 55-minute news conference to brag about phenomenal economic numbers and to give a push to an upcoming vote on NATO expansion. What he was not eager to discuss, Monica Lewinsky.
I have nothing else to say. I just don't have anything else to say about that.
He did, though, have an answer to the recent and long-running attacks on his character.
They can affect my reputation. They can do nothing, for good or ill, to affect my character. Unfortunately, they can't make it any better either. They can't make it any better. They can't make it any worse.
And he offered occasional flashes of anger at Ken Starr, once when asked if he felt personally responsible for his friends and colleagues' legal bills.
If there's one person in the world I'm not responsible for, it's Mrs. Starr.
The president was much more forthcoming on a range of other issues. He was hopeful about the prospects for peace in the Middle East. He hinted that he might extend his race initiative beyond its one-year limit. He called for speedy action on tobacco legislation. And he insisted that he can rise above recent attacks by Newt Gingrich.
Nothing he says about me personally, nothing, will keep me from working with him and with other Republicans in the Congress.
Now, what we saw today was yet another illustration of the current White House strategy. Avoid the allegations, stick to the high road. Many think it's working well, but as Ken Starr continues to reveal his hand, the investigation may become harder to ignore. Tom.
Thanks, Claire Shipman at the White House tonight. Also this tonight, the very high-profile spokeswoman for Paula Jones, Susan Carpenter McMillan, said today she's stepping down as Jones' formal representative to devote her time now to a campaign to pass chemical castration laws for repeat child molesters in states outside of her native California. And as those hearings into IRS abuses continued on Capitol Hill today, a surprise witness. If you think the IRS only goes after the little known, ask Howard Baker, former Republican leader of the Senate, one of the best-known political resumes in Washington. It's a chilling tale. Here's NBC's Gwen Eiffel.
Howard Baker, advisor to presidents, three-term senator from Tennessee, presidential candidate. He left Congress in 1985 with his record and his reputation intact. But today, he told a shocked Senate committee it was a narrow escape. In 1989, the IRS actually investigated him for bribery and money laundering, charges that were completely unfounded.
The system, in a pernicious, evil way, victimized me in a way that cannot be totally eliminated.
He didn't know until Senate investigators told him that a self-serving IRS agent tried to set him up.
Mr. Chairman, I find it very disturbing indeed that the criminal division agent attempted to frame me and reported his bogus allegations to the FBI and to the Justice Department.
The IRS employee who discovered the plan in this Tennessee office says he was told to say and do nothing about it.
What I had uncovered was an attempt to create an unfounded criminal investigation on two national political figures.
For the second day in a row, IRS Commissioner Charles Rosati rushed to the cameras to defend his agency.
The vast majority of IRS employees are dedicated to serving the American people.
The IRS has to clean up a week's worth of bad news in one day of hearings tomorrow. They plan to admit that everything might be true, but that they'll fix it right away. Gwen Eiffel, NBC News, the Capitol.
Still ahead tonight, it's the Fleecing of America's greatest hits. Some of the most outrageous ways that your tax dollars are wasted.
Fleecing doesn't begin to capture what idiocy is involved in this. This is shearing the lamb completely.
What happened to those fleeces? We'll tell you about them. Up next, a murder story with a 90s twist. A man accused of killing his daughter confesses in a very unusual way.
Good morning. This is the Farm Report. Pork bellies, wheat, and soy futures.
Where am I? Waking up is hard, wherever you are.
Good morning, sir.
But coffee helps. And cereal and fresh fruit. Ooh, that definitely helps. And before long,
He did it again! Unbelievable!
you're a human again. This town's not so bad. Complimentary breakfast at Comfort Inn and Comfort Suites. It's more than a room. It's comfort.
How do you furnish a room with a ceiling made of sky? A room with a chandelier of stars. And a carpet that grows beneath your feet. Introducing the affordably priced Home and Garden collections from Ethan Allen. Because the most beautiful place in your home may not be in your home at all. There's a sale on now.
What time is it?
It's time.
Okay, Tiger, hold on.
Time to think about his future. The Equitable, a trusted partner in the U.S. AXA, a global powerhouse with $500 billion under management. AXA and Equitable, a formula for success. Equitable is a member of the global AXA Group.
In North Dakota tonight, a 29-year-old computer programmer prepares for his arraignment. The charge, murdering his daughter. What makes this case so unusual is how it came to light. Here's NBC's George Lewis.
Larry Froistad, recently extradited from San Diego to North Dakota, was taken into custody after confessing to the murder of his 5-year-old daughter, Amanda, during a bitter custody battle with his ex-wife. It's the unusual nature of that confession that has attracted worldwide attention. Froistad was a member of Moderation Management, a support group for problem drinkers. Some of the group's members hold meetings over the internet, discussing problems and posting words of encouragement to one another. The members of the group weren't quite prepared for the shocking email message Larry Froistad sent on March 22nd. Froistad claimed that 3 years earlier he murdered his daughter in Bowman, North Dakota. He described in grim detail how he set the house on fire. When she was asleep, Froistad wrote, I got wickedly drunk, set our house on fire, went to bed, listened to her scream twice, climbed out the window, and set about putting on a show of shock, surprise, and grief. Elisa DiCarlo of New York was one of 3 members of the group who turned Froistad into the authorities.
I screamed. That was my first reaction. The next morning, after consulting with another member of Moderation Management and my own conscience, I faxed the San Diego police.
Froistad later recanted his confession, saying he made up the story under the influence of antidepressant drugs. His lawyers refused to talk to NBC News. Prosecutors believed the confession.
He implicated himself in the death of his daughter. Subsequently, we obtained additional evidence which corroborated the story.
Many members of the support group say it was wrong to break the group's confidentiality and turn Froistad in. The people who did it say it's impossible to ignore such an awful crime. George Lewis, NBC News, Los Angeles.
Up next, NBC News in depth, running red lights, and the very high price we all pay.
You better believe a pain like this, from a soul like this, will go on like this, live on like this, and look like this, give you pride like this, 'cause it's true.
It's True Value paint, and you can't do better. It really is this good.
Goes on like this, lives on like this, looks like this, right like this.
True Value paint. Great paint, great store.
At Pep Boys, get any 4 of our 35,000-mile all-season steel-belted tires at an incredible low $99. That's right, any size, any 4 35,000-mile tires, just $99. Or double your mileage with a full set of 4 70,000-mile tires for just $169. That's any size, any 4 70,000-mile tires in stock for just $169. Your choice, 4 35,000-mile tires for $99 or 4 70,000-mile tires for $169. Pep Boys, everything but gas.
With the fresh taste of homemade, Hellman's salad dressing takes any salad and makes it your best. And that brings out the best in everything.
Dateline Friday, you may have seen this. But that was only a small part of O.J. Simpson's bizarre latest interview. Now, for the first time in the United States.
Did your daughter ever ask you about it?
No.
She never asked you about the murders?
Dateline NBC has the complete tape. A special 2-part interview, Friday and Sunday.
NBC News in depth tonight. Federal safety officials are getting down to the basics tonight. A new campaign, a new warning about some of the most fundamental rules of the road, like stopping at red lights. Of course, when people run right through them, the consequences can be deadly. And with 180 million people expected to take to the highways this summer, the government is getting serious about dealing with irresponsible and aggressive drivers. In depth tonight, NBC's Robert Hager.
In Denver, 1 victim in critical condition today, another 3 injured in this mangled wreckage after police charged this man with running a red light Wednesday morning. With more than 2,600 deaths a year at red lights, the government announced today it'll expand the current program to crack down. So far successful in 28 of 31 target communities. Now it'll expand to 200 more. At a Washington intersection today, Transportation Secretary Rodney Slater and others watched as cars illegally ran a light.
So that's 9.
The American Trauma Society's Harry Teeter.
We're going to stop running red lights.
But some say running red lights may be just one symptom of a larger problem. Overly aggressive driving, involved in an estimated 1 of every 3 accidents today. And it may be getting worse as roads become more congested.
A car cut off in California. In Maryland, a tailgater speeds up from behind. The car in front jams on brakes in retaliation. Seconds later, the madness escalates. The driver behind is about to seek revenge, passing on the wrong side on the right. Watch. And sometimes it ends in violence. Linda Connolly was shot and wounded. She'd given a frantic explanation to a 911 operator.
A guy cut me off, and so I cut him off, and he shot me. I'm bleeding at the head, all down the front of my chest.
In St. Louis, this driver made a tearful courtroom apology for this accident that killed a young woman. He said he intentionally cut her car off after it passed him. At Colorado State University, Professor Jerry Deffenbacher uses a virtual reality screen to test people, see why some get angry.
They can be fairly laid back, but boy, they get behind the car and they're shouting and cursing and waving and doing all kinds of things. Get out of the car and they seem to be, a very mellow person again.
Maryland is one of 20 states trying to do something about aggressive driving. Signs warn motorists, and state police set up cameras along the highway to catch incidents on videotape. The Maryland State Police's Colonel David Mitchell.
So far this year, we've written over 36,000 tickets for aggressive driving types of violations.
And many communities have started to use cameras at red lights, snap a photo of cars running through, and send out tickets in the mail. All part of an effort to get drivers nationwide to calm down, pay attention, and save lives. Robert Hager, NBC News, Washington.
Still ahead tonight, the Fleecing of America, a boat ramp to nowhere, new information on some of the other favorite ripoffs that we've told you about.
After his heart attack, Ed's doctor told him to exercise and take aspirin regularly. So he takes genuine Bayer aspirin to help prevent a second heart attack. But then there are those days when Ed's muscles ache and Ed could use extra strength Bayer. Nothing is stronger for pain. If you're on an aspirin regimen, you don't need Tylenol because doctors say you can take more aspirin for pain.
How are your legs?
Great. Race you home. Bayer, powerful pain relief and so much more.
Connoisseurs know when there's something extraordinary in the air. The ultimate cuisine for the ultimate gourmet. Introducing new Fancy Feast roasted entrees. Our most succulent chicken or turkey, exquisitely ground, then slow roasted with savory juices. A uniquely satisfying feast for the senses. Fancy Feast roasted entrees from Friskies. Good taste is easy to recognize.
When your allergies are a nightmare, you need fast relief. You need the power of Zyrtec. Prescription Zyrtec starts working fast and lasts 24 hours. So when allergies are a nightmare, remember the power of Zyrtec. In studies, drowsiness was the most common side effect. Other side effects included fatigue and dry mouth. Most were mild or moderate. To learn more, ask your doctor or pharmacist.
New X-Lax is here.
Good morning, America. How are you?
Great! It's a great new X-Lax with Senna, a natural active ingredient. So dependable, it's guaranteed to work by morning. New X-Lax with natural Senna. 4 out of 5 users agree. It's gentle. You won't find a cramp warning on the label like Correctol has. Dependable new X-Lax with natural Senna.
Good morning, America.
Guaranteed.
It's one of the most significant votes in the Senate in this decade, and yet there's been very little debate. It's the expansion of NATO, the Western military and political alliance that held the line against communism. Is it now time for Poland, the Czech Republic, and Hungary to become members? Here's NBC's Andrea Mitchell.
This is why the president wants to make NATO bigger, the fear of more conflict in the heart of Europe. Today, another standoff in Central Europe.
History tells us that unless we are always vigilant and always prepared, then there's always a likelihood of some new conflict.
But expanding NATO means the U.S. and its allies will now have to defend Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic against any attack, expanding NATO all the way to Russia's border. But is a bigger NATO necessarily better? The Russians feel threatened, angry.
They have said that if they have to defend their territory, they will do so with nuclear weapons.
Opponents also call it a jobs program for defense contractors.
They realize that their markets for weapons are drying up here in the U.S., and now they want to supply these other countries.
Cost to the taxpayer, estimates are all over the place, from $400 million to $120 billion over the next decade.
And you will be fairly asked by your constituents,
You mean to tell me they're closing our beloved hometown base that has been here defending America all these years, and you are helping to build bases abroad?
But tonight, the White House is predicting victory and promising to expand NATO even further. Andrea Mitchell, NBC News at the State Department.
And in Jerusalem tonight, the celebration goes on. Israel, marking 50 years of independence. Vice President Al Gore joins in the festivities, saying America stands with Israel. Throughout the last 5 decades, Israel, of course, has been a divided nation. Jews and Arabs fighting with weapons and with words, each laying claim to the land of their ancestors. Tonight, 2 Americans who represent the conflict and the hope. Here's NBC's Martin Fletcher.
They left this for this. 2 Americans, 2 strangers from the same neighborhood in New York. One an Arab, one a Jew. Both came here for the same reason the faithful have been drawn here for so many centuries.
I wanted to be able to come to a place where no one could tell me that I don't belong.
Israel, now a Jewish settler. He came to Shiloh, where his ancestors from the Bible once lived.
This land is mine and for my children in the future.
Saeed, now an Arab farmer, returned to the land his father once owned, down the valley from Israel's house. He wants to raise his children here. They came from the same place half a world away and now live just a mile apart. Saeed there, Israel here. They're neighbors who live not side by side, but back to back. February 1996, 3 p.m., Israel's wife was almost killed in a terrorist attack while she waited for a bus to go home. An Arab rammed his car into the bus stop.
Literally drove into the crowd of people, made a sharp right, sharp left, and mowed down over 20 people.
5 years ago, an Arab like Saeed was tending his fields when a Jewish settler shot him in cold blood. Every time he plants his olive trees, he says, the Israeli government tries to kill them and leave him with no way to survive there.
They came to the land, they sprayed with chemical spray, they killed all the trees. And I have to go back again to plant it again.
As for Israel, he says the Arabs, Saeed's people, are trying to drive him out.
Cars were stoned, telephone wires were cut, generator was burnt.
Though they have never met, Israel and Saeed both fear one another, and they both vow to stay.
All the hills were barren. There were no vineyards where we planted vineyards. There are no olive trees where we planted olive trees.
They both came empowered with their religious convictions and American ideals.
I was in America, and the freedom in America, to fight for your rights, I'm going to take it and bring it over here, to fight for my freedom and for my land.
2 Americans, an Arab and a Jew, so close and yet, like so many before them, unable still to find common ground. Martin Fletcher, NBC News on the West Bank.
When we come back, the fleecing of America.
The best way to stop suffering from allergies is never to start. This is nasal crom. You heard right. Nasal crom. It's allergy prevention. Nasal crom doesn't just relieve allergies. It flat out prevents them, preventing the natural defenses in your nose from going haywire. So you can live like a person with no allergies. Nasal crom's like nothing else. No drowsiness, no jitters, no dependency. Nasal crom. The best way to stop suffering is never to start.
Next time, call a Roto-Rooter plumber. When we make an appointment, we keep it.
Parenting is a constant learning process. What you have to do is prioritize.
Back in '88, Earl wanted to retire, spend more time with Tiger.
My dad taught me.
I met an American Express financial advisor. Dave is a personal friend of mine to this day. We trust each other because we got a track record.
It's about making smarter decisions.
We're a team, and that's when dreams can happen.
American Express Financial Advisors.
There's a whole new way to feed your lawn and garden. The new Miracle Grow No Clog 4-in-1. It turns your sprinkler into a feeder so you can feed with Miracle Grow while you water. Saves time, saves work. Miracle Grow results have never been easier.
Around here, we're always having a salad. And not just because it's good for us, but because it tastes good. And the people who make Kraft-free dressings seem to know what we like. They know the fat-free part shouldn't ruin the taste part.
Smells great.
It's simple. I guess they just know what we like. Around here, the dressing is Kraft-free.
Tomorrow, a day in the life of the McCoy septuplets. How are their parents managing to care for them? How much is it costing? NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw tomorrow.
Tonight on MSNBC, analysis of the president's press conference. 2 hours, 2 experts, Keith Olbermann and Brian Williams. Tonight on MSNBC.
Tonight, the Fleecing of America. We take you back through some memorable fleecing reports for an update, and it's not very reassuring. The National Park Service outhouse at the Delaware Water Gap in Pennsylvania. We told you about it last year. Imported slate roof tiles, Indiana limestone porch railings, 2 toilets, price tag $330,000, more than the price of a colonial-style home for sale nearby. Since our report, a more complete accounting, including design and parking lot cost, shows the actual price is more than double, a fleece of $770,000. The federal courthouse in Boston. We first reported on the runaway cost 3 years ago, including $1.6 million for a boat dock. Today, still under construction, still more than $60 million over the initial cost estimates. And now, a government watchdog agency concludes the biggest problem is that the government doesn't really know how much a courthouse should cost.
This is fleecing on a grand scale.
TV Marty. We told you about that in 1996, how Congress created it to beam pro-democracy television into Cuba. We told you it cost about $10 million a year to pay for production. We also reported that no one in Cuba can see it because Fidel Castro jams the signal. Since our report, Congress spent another $1.76 million to unjam the signal. According to a new study, it is not working.
Fleecing doesn't begin to capture what idiocy is involved in this. This is shearing the lamb completely.
The computer system to catch parents who don't pay child support. 2 years ago, we reported on the $2 billion subsidy to help states track down deadbeat parents. It didn't work then, and today, another $500 million spent. Still, it doesn't work. And uncollected child support has grown by a staggering $7 billion. The boat ramp to nowhere. Last year, we reported how it cost taxpayers more than $100,000 a year to maintain the Optima Dam and boat ramp in the Oklahoma Panhandle. When completed 20 years ago, the dam was supposed to create a lake for recreation, but there never was enough water. Since our report, no change. The boat ramp still goes to a dry hole. It remains a $100,000 a year fleecing of America. Tomorrow night, an NBC Nightly News exclusive will have a day in the life of the McCoy septuplets. Imagine, 4 boys, 3 girls, feed, diaper, and care for. How are the parents and their friends doing it? We'll have a special in-depth look inside the small home for the family of 10. That's tomorrow night. I'm Tom Brokaw. Good night.
NBC Nightly News is America's most watched evening news program.